Daryl, did you want to go ahead and start?
Oh, is it on?
Yeah. Can
Oh,
you see the slides?
I can't see the slides. Well, if we're on, hey, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon for those of us on the West Coast, or I'm sorry, the East Coast. My name is Daryl Polk. I'm the Education Director for the Public Technology Institute, and I'm your ad hoc introductory host for this. Our co-host, Adam Frumkin, the CIO for Franklin County, Ohio, will be joining us shortly. He's coming back from the NACO conference, so we're giving him a little time to get settled. Today we have with us Doug Robinson, and he's the Executive Director for the National Association of State CIOs. Doug, welcome. We really appreciate you having you here today. And we're here to talk about the plotting your course through shifting tides. And so I don't think this is going to be an alien concept to anybody in the webinar today. We've had a lot of change in the past 6 months and a lot of change in the past 5 years. It seems to have snowballed into one big event. So at some point, I will hand off to Adam and Doug and let them kind of go into the heart of our demonstration today. But for right now, I'd like to talk about the background of both of our panelists. So if we could advance the slide. Doug's the executive director, as I said, National Association of Chief Information Officers. And we were just talking, he is on a tour out talking about all of these subject matters, especially Gen AI, all over the country, because there's just such an appetite for information on all of these things that are just sort of landing on us without warning in many cases. And then Adam Frumkin, the CIO of Franklin County, Ohio, Data Center and Public Technology Institute president. So he is the president of our board. And so the two of them will be talking about perspectives from both the county seat and from the state. So real quickly, though, I'd like to talk about the Public Technology Institute. And Public Technology Institute is a nonprofit that's actively supporting local government at all levels. So townships, cities, counties, all the way up to the state level. And we have a partnership with Rutgers University, as you see. We provide education, we provide client services, and we provide event services. And ultimately, we provide a membership that encases all of our services that builds a community around local government technology. So if you're interested in any of the services that we offer, or certainly if you're interested in membership, our website is at pti.org, pti.org. And we are a division of Fusion Learning Partners, which is a nonprofit based out of Minnesota. So it looks like we have Adam with us and we have Doug here. So gentlemen, I'm going to cut over to you at this point. Thank you both for being here.
Okay. Thank you. Adam, do you want me to go ahead and start?
Yeah, go ahead.
In there? All right. Very good. Let me get into some of my my comments here, and we'll bring up the NASCIO deck and talk about state government. There we go. Again, welcome. Certainly from NASCIO, and I'm going to quickly go through some of the updates that we are seeing across the state, kind of mid calendar year. But I want to take a step back for about 6 months and get a quick recap of the top 10 state CIO priorities. And we do this every year, as many of you know. And I'm going to highlight 2 or 3 of these topics for updates in our July briefing. But each year we ask our state CIOs to prioritize their top strategies and their management directions and processes. And again, we do an electronic ballot of this. We typically get almost 50 of our state CIOs to vote on this. For the 12th consecutive year, cybersecurity ends up #1 priority, but it was very slight. Within a few votes, artificial intelligence, Gen AI, machine learning, dropped in at #2. So it rocketed up there. It was a #3 in 2024. So we're seeing a very steady climb up to the top of the pyramid, so to speak. Some of these other topics have been on and off the list for many, many years, including data management and cloud services. Workforce dropped a little bit. But the other item I would highlight, and I'm going to talk about for one moment, is accessibility. With the DOJ final rulemaking on IT accessibility for websites and for mobile, It dropped in at number 10. So consolidation and optimization of infrastructure in the environment was down there as a squeaker in number 11. So it gets knocked off the list for the first time since 2007. And so again, it was a perennial top 10, but we uh, gonna drop off, and I suspect it will come back. And we see budget and cost control come back after a hiatus of about 3 years. Again, not surprising, driven by available funding from pandemic era funding from the federal government. Budget issues and cost control issues were not paramount for the state CIOs, but again, back on the list in 2025. So let me kind of highlight some of the trends, and I'm really going to focus on three that are really moving quickly in today's environment, and not surprisingly at all to any of you listening out there today. We're seeing an increased focus on enhancing citizen services, particularly using business process automation and streamlining services. Continued quest to more modernization. Every state CIO aspires for a modern environment. Continues to be a challenge with the technical debt they have and the legacy environments that still exist, but that does not prevent them from doing more cloud and SaaS adoption. Again, very prominent activities across all of the states. Cybersecurity continues to be, again, number one on the list, trying to reduce the risk to the business of government and the continuity of state government. Many states are pushing a whole of state model. Some are adopting zero trust. But the topic of the day is really around the state and local cybersecurity grant program and what's going to happen with that. It's a 4-year program, $1 billion. We're in the final year of that. It is unlikely, based on current prognostications, that it's going to be reauthorized. NASCIO testified in April of this year, urging reauthorization in front of the House Homeland Security Committee. But again, I suspect that one of the challenges is going to be its competition with many other cuts in the federal government and to CISA and the entire DHS budget. It is unlikely at this point that it will be reauthorized. And the question on the table, and certainly has been for months, is whether it's going to be part of the clawback, the rescission package, because we still have a year of funding, and really the debate is whether or not that's going to be included. Latest intel says it's not going to be included, and so the states may get their final portion. That's important to our local government folks because 80% of those dollars are passed down to local governments for cybersecurity. So the next top three topics I'm going to basically talk about a little more depth with a few comments about our latest data. Obviously, Gen AI, generative intelligence, top of the list in terms of what's going on in the states, with additional conversations with legislators and attorneys general and other activities. The CIOs are kind of front and center there with particularly many of the policies, many of the frameworks that have been issued, and I'll talk about some of the data we've just collected on where that stands. We've seen a significant increase in state technology policy and legislation over the last 2 years. A lot of that is focused on data privacy. It's focused on protecting children. It's focused on AI and deep fakes and pornography, particularly pornography generated by generative AI. And some of the cybersecurity. So we've seen that it's really been kind of a hallmark this year, the amount of tech legislation that we've seen. And if you look at what we've seen in Gen AI, and I'll give you some data in a moment, we're looking at over 1,000 bills together across all the states. And then finally, a topic that we're going to really focus on today is, I guess, the word of the year so far for 2025 is uncertainty for state and local IT. A lot of the federal funding has either already been cut or it's at risk for some of these programs. And a lot of the programs, particularly in areas like cybersecurity and health and human services, they are in the devolution stage. They're pushing back down to the states. Education, Medicaid, SNAP. Obviously, cybersecurity is inherent in all of those, but it's important to note that all of that is still uncertain and still to be finally formed. And so we may be another few months before we know. We may be the end of 2025 before we even know what the overall impact is going to be. And then finally, the proposed moratorium, which was something that we obviously focused on for many, many weeks, was the proposed 10-year moratorium language, a simple one paragraph in the House budget reconciliation bill, which said that states could not regulate or introduce new regulations or any of the current regulations they had on the books. They could not be enforced for a 10-year period. This was again a direct attack on the states by Congress and a preemption of all existing state government laws and regulations. Certainly, if you were paying attention to anything going on at that time period, we had that bill, surprisingly, with the language intact, moved to the Senate. We lobbied in terms of our coalition, and NASCIO came out with a very strong oppositional statement from day one. And ultimately, that amendment, after some activities and some negotiation and conciliatory discussions, was finally removed at about 5 a.m. on July 1st, 99-1 vote of an amendment to remove the 10-year moratorium. And so, again, a success and victory over kind of a really an onerous attack on the laboratories of the democracy in the states. And so NASCIO is very reluctant to wade in deeply in some of these things. We really do not come out very strongly in a lot of legislation, but this one we did. However, the story is not ended. We've already heard within a couple of days, both from House and Senate leadership, that they intend to try again, maybe with a separate bill or include this bill in other funding packages in the future. So we are not going to be complacent and stand by. We're going to continue to monitor this. This would have had a significant impact on what work the states have already done and the work they would do in the future to block this for 10 years. So let me wrap up with just some data from some of our recent surveys, as well as some preliminary data from a survey that has just closed and yet to be released. On the legislative front, our friends at NCSL have been tracking this. As I said, in 2024, 800 plus bills. In 2025, already over 1,000 bills referencing artificial intelligence. In some states like Texas and California, more than a couple of dozen. I think almost 40 bills in California had to do with generative AI for the most part. You can see the focus of those bills. 2024, the primary focus was government use, meaning state government use of AI. That has shifted a little bit because of consumer protection concerns to private sector use, and you see the numbers, 202 bills. To date, meaning as of last week, 25 states have actually enacted bills related to AI in the marketplace or in state government use or in elections and notifications and consumer protection and marketing, political campaigning. Many of these things have all been regulated or prohibited by these legislations. So NCSL has an excellent AI resource page, and you can see all of this in more data, including some of the aspects of the states that have already enacted legislation. Again, almost half of them already have legislation on the books from the 2025 session, since many of the states have ended their legislative session. Cybersecurity. Let me talk a little bit about cybersecurity today, and I think the yin and the yang on this is, again, Gen AI. We have the majority of the states that are using generative AI solutions in their cybersecurity products and platforms that they contract for. They're using it. But they're also seeing that it's being used against them in very sophisticated attacks. The bad actors are now using Gen AI to create phishing campaigns that are highly sophisticated and really take advantage of those large language models and all the data that they're capturing about a particular target. And so the states are fighting back with using their own Gen AI tools. So we're going to see this again continue to go forth across all of the states, and I suspect local governments. And again, I mentioned some of these items already that we're seeing, particularly around the grant program. One item I will bring up on the top 10, I mentioned accessibility on the top 10 list for the first time. So we have just started analyzing our preliminary data from our 2025 state CIO survey. And one of the questions we asked among many about accessibility was, where are the states? What does the CIO see as their progress in implementing the Department of Justice final rule on web and mobile app accessibility? For those of you familiar in the local government space, this rule went into effect in 2024. It requires that states and some large local governments be compliant by April of 2024. So again, states for the first time have to be fully compliant with the WCAG, the WCAG 2.1 AA, which is essentially the web content accessibility guidelines. They have to be compliant by April of 2024 if you have a population of over 50,000. So that's states and large locals. Below that, they have an additional year to be compliant by 2027. So this affects every website and all mobile applications and use of mobile technology that's citizen facing. So this is, again, a fairly heavy lift. And about, you can see from our data just collected, this is brand new data, that about 50% of the states, their implementation is in progress. Some states have already adopted, had already adopted 2.1 or 2.2 as part of their own accessibility rules and regulations in the states. But again, the remediation is going to take some time. There's a long list of exceptions, but it still doesn't, again, prevent the states from having to meet this obligation by April of 2024. Unless they fall under one of those exceptions identified in the regulations from DOJ. So if you're not familiar with this from a local government standpoint, you certainly must get familiar if you need to make that population cutoff and be ready to be fully compliant by April of 2026. There will be penalties, civil penalties and fines at some point, but I suspect that will take a while to go forth. And let me wrap up a little bit about AI and what we're seeing in terms of the data from our most recent survey against kind of a forecast from the state CIOs on the business functions that they felt that would benefit, what business processes, and not surprising, digital services, cybersecurity. So these are some of the targets of the current pilots, as well as some of the states that have already rolled out Gen AI solutions into production. And again, that's a relatively small number, but we're seeing some already in the fraud and prevention. We have released research with our colleagues and our collaborative strategic partner association, NASCIO, the state procurement officials, on AI and procurement. And we will be releasing a report and a study later this summer with our corporate partner Accenture on the impact of Gen AI and enhancing digital citizen services. So we have a whole set of new data around that. If you look at where they're using it today, you see already in use, as you would expect, low-hanging opportunities, primarily focused internally. But we see a number of states that are already in this where they're doing all you do today. Use it for a virtual meeting, automatic transcription, document generation, regulatory review, chatbots. But those are some of the top items, and you see a very similar list for those that are piloting. So we now have current data of hundreds of use cases because of our recent survey. But again, some of our recent NASCIO publications in 24 and 25 outline what some of the states were already doing in a pilot mode. In terms of just overall governance and overall frameworks, you see some, again, preliminary data, which shows that it's really hitting at the targets, which are the top challenges for states. One is having an advisory or governance body. Some of those were required by statute. Much of the legislation required some type of committee or advisory council be formed around this. The state CIOs, along with their other colleagues in the executive branch, have instituted some type of enterprise policy and procedures, trying to prevent bad things from happening. A number of states have comprehensive inventories that's required. And you're going to see a lot of those products are, again, commercial products in the marketplace that are coming to the state. Every new application today, every new piece of software is powered by Gen AI. And you all see that, you know that. And so that's, you look at these inventories as predominantly commercial products. And again, responsible, ethical use, that's going to be the hallmark of what the states are doing. So I would going to assess this overall as it's relatively slow go with some kind of vanguards out there that are already in production. But for the most part, the states are taking a relatively cautious approach to this because of some of the unknowns, but they also know there's a tremendous opportunities out there to kind of release Gen AI to the state government opportunity and the state government environment. And then again, a status from where they are in terms of pilot production, proofs of concepts. We have many states that they have a sandbox. We have many states that have pilots. You can see 90% are running some kind of pilots across the states. California had a very aggressive program with 5 pilots that were funded. They're now underway and have been for several months. Lots of proofs of concept. What you do see is though very little dedicated funding. So it's a 23%. That's some of the challenges we have around the states is there's no dedicated funding, at least at a large scale right now for this. So let me end with some of the perspectives and observations from not only the reports that we did in 2024, but the current survey data we have and the reports that we'll be releasing in 2025 about Gen AI in the states. Common challenges, I don't think it's going to surprise anybody. One, and most importantly, is just the lack of enterprise governance across the board. That is growing. We saw that at a fairly low level, meaning less than a quarter of the states in 2024 had any type of governance body or any type of enterprise framework or roadmap to the deployment of Gen AI and overall adoption. And now we see that is increasing, but that's still a major challenge. And again, we're focused on the CIOs of the executive branch, but you've got other branches in the state, obviously, that are already using this technology. One that's continued to come up across the board, both public and private sector, is poor data quality. You've got these large language models that are ingesting data, even if it's a closed or kind of a RAG model within the state. They are utilizing data that has a lack of integrity in cases, has poor quality, has lack of actual authenticity in some cases. And so you have to be very careful about all that. And that's a big gap that the states have to close if they want to successfully implement some of these solutions. And then finally, a report that we put out last year and continue to talk about is workforce skills gap. There is a workforce readiness issue here between what needs to be done, and we hear that from the state CIOs on a consistent basis. We have a few states that have invested in training and invested in a formal training program, but that's going to have to grow across the board. So, with that, Adam, let me end there and turn it over to you to talk about what's going on in local governments, and then we'll address some of the questions that we've gotten and again, continue to put questions in the chat. We also have a whole series of questions that were submitted during registration, and so Adam's going to bring those up, and we've got a lot to cover.
Oh, thanks. And Dale, if you can go ahead and share the other slide deck, that'd be great. So I just wanted to kind of take a quick minute and talk about some of the benefits of PTI membership, and then we'll get into some of the similar things that I wanted to talk about that Doug has already shared. So some of our membership benefits include discounted tuition on PTI conferences and certification programs. They also maintain and give you access to a variety of resources to help you stay informed and connected, such as monthly tech talks, weekly technology matters and news briefs, and a growing collection of webinars, newsletters, and podcasts. And the opportunity to participate not only on a person-to-person basis, but in research and identify trends that impact local government, the local government IT community. So with that, and finally, I want to mention that something coming up is the GovIT Leadership Summit and Symposium taking place this November 18th through the 20th at the JW Marriott Mall of Americas. The conference theme is Navigating Change in Uncertain Times. Let's solve today's challenges together. In addition to breakout sessions and case study type presentations, we'll have a series of main stage panel discussions featuring state and local government IT thought leaders, including Doug Robinson and representatives from NASCIO and PTI. So let's kind of talk about some of the trends from a local perspective. Very similar to what Doug was talking about from a state perspective and what they're seeing and what they've heard from all of you from a state CIO perspective. From a local perspective, it's not much different, but I want to kind of give it a little bit of a different spin. So over the last 6 months, we've seen governments move beyond AI curiosity to real deployment, especially in a generative AI perspective. Some of the opportunities are streamlined citizen services, improved data analysis, and in some cases, reduce manual workloads. Some of the challenges with all of that are governance, risk management, of course, ethics and procurement, and some workforce training issues that we need to all go through. So what are other people doing, or what are we doing about that? We're creating and trying to create enterprise AI policies and use guidelines, launching pilot projects, i.e. automated triage, chatbots, and using some predictive analytics. In my opinion, I think that overall, there are a lot of things that we're all doing in concert or similar to one another. And one of the best things that I agree upon and I think is great, especially things that Doug and I have spoken about, and I know I've spoken to the state of Ohio CIO about, is how do we work better together? And how do we bring things together so that the state and local governments are doing things in concert with one another versus in parallel to one another? So the other piece of that is workforce evolution. So the tech talent market has not cooled off. Public sector roles still face a lot of steep competition, and people are being picked from all of us. We have a tendency and a great ability to build up our staff and train them well. And then the private sector looks at that and says, hey, there's some great people over here, we can buy them. And I mean that. So workers, on the flip side of that, what we need to do is stand firm on what we can give and how we go about that. One of that is we can provide flexibility. We bring meaning or a purpose to their role. And we're also starting to, and I know that we do, offer very modern tool sets that they want to work with. So we need to respond with revising our job classifications, how we look at remote work, and building upskilling pathways for people to have, so that they know that when they come to government, it's not like they come here and stay, it's coming here so they can grow. Some of those other things that I just kind of spoke about was the shifting intergovernmental partnerships. So funding streams and policy coordination between federal, state, and local governments are always going to be in flux, and they're very much in flux right now. There's a greater push for alignment and accountability, especially in cybersecurity, broadband expansion, and infrastructure investment. So some of the recent trends that we've talked about are federal cybersecurity programs that now expect states to support localities more intentionally. In conjunction with what Doug stated, I also was in DC about a month ago, speaking with both the majority and minority whips of Congress and their staffs on the reauthorization of the cybersecurity grant program. I'm hoping, and I think we all continue to hope and hope for the best, that something will come out of it. I don't know if it will be the same thing we had before, but I'm hoping that the sites will be seen that this is something that is much needed, and we need to continue down this pathway from the federal perspective all the way down to the local perspective. Some of the other things that I would say from a local perspective, citizen expectations are driving our transformation. Citizens are now expecting government services to be more accessible, fast, and intuitive. They want seamless digital service design. It's not just for tech use, it's a trust and equity issue. One of the things that was very surprising to us, we just went through changing over our specific web presence and our web page, our main web page. And prior to moving forward, some of the public information or research that we got is people did not trust web pages, and they didn't trust going to government web pages. So part of that is we've got to rebuild that trust, and we need to center on user experience for service design towards the users or the residents. And we need to prioritize, and this is getting some laws out of our way and getting other things out of our way, but we have to prioritize data sharing integration, and figuring out how we can use or get in front of some identity solutions that allow our residents to have access to the things they're looking for. Last thing I want to bring up, and then we'll get to the questions that you all have for Doug and I, is we have to be able to chart a path forward. Today, we as leaders in the IT space have to navigate uncertain waters, but the one thing we have to realize is we're not doing it alone. I think the next 6 months, honestly, for all of us, next 6 months to a year, for all of us as IT leaders in the state and local government area, is adaptability in our technology adoption, collaboration across jurisdictions, and resilience in the face of our new challenges that we have and that we're facing from a funding perspective and political climate, and what we need to deal with and how we're going to get there. And I think that we can come about it together, and we can rise above it. And part of that is revisiting our strategy and our flexibility to meet the needs of not only our government entities, but first and foremost, our residents and who we serve. So with that, I'll turn this back over to us moving forward in today's discussion. So for today's discussion, we divided this up and divided the questions we received through the registration process into 4 areas. We thought that this would be a good way for us to start our dialogue. As I mentioned earlier, please feel free to post any questions. I know Doug mentioned that as well. So let's talk about some of the shifting tides, federal and state local relationships, budget and finance, and of course, AI. So, Doug, I think one of the first questions we got was, how can, this was the first question that was submitted, was, how can I best prepare my organization for uncertain times and shifting tides? So,
Yes. Well, I think I think you mentioned it, and certainly we've been talking about that. And I think the key for that, particularly as I talk to many states and state CIOs, is that flexibility term, right? And the fact that you may have to shift, as we titled this webcast. You may have to be shifting your priorities, and maybe not. I don't like the kind of the hunker down mentality, but I do like understanding that you may have to go back the basics and hold tight. We see a lot of the states, what they're doing is they want to continue to advance forward, but they may have to put some of their more aspirational goals aside for right now while they work through this, particularly since the impact of some of these financial decisions and some of the budget decisions and some of the particularly onerous decisions around the state funding for some of these programs are happening at a bad time in terms of the budget cycle, right? So they don't have a chance to go back and fix those and get additional funds. And the same thing with the state CIOs. So I think they're dealing with this by being much more flexible and trying to kind of refresh and understand that some of the priorities they had may have to shift. They may got to put some things on hold. I think part of that is then managing expectations with the elected officials and the lawmakers that may prove they may get frustrated. We've seen this in the past, but this is a different situation because it's been thrust upon them, and it's particularly challenging. And you may have local governments in this space, but for the states and the state CIOs in particular, 90% of them are still operating under a chargeback, and about 10 or 12 states still operate under 100% chargeback. So they don't get any additional funding from the general revenue source. They don't get any general funds. They don't get any innovation or modernization funds. They have to operate in that space where, as an internal service provider to all of the executive branch agencies, they don't have any flexibility because it's not built into their budget to have the capability to move. And so they have to figure out a new way to be flexible, which may be trying to curtail some less utilized services, or may have to go back and negotiate with their agencies. Now, again, the challenge there is the agencies are already being cut because of the pass-through. The state CIO is being paid by federal funds. So people always ask me, well, if the state CIO doesn't get any federal funds, how does it impact them operationally? Well, it impacts them because percentage in some smaller states, it could be as much as 30% of the CIO budget is comprised of federal funds. So the color of money and the complexity of the business financial model has a lot to do with the impact. So this is something they're all talking about today. Is again, how can they be more flexible? Right now, there are so many unknowns as to the impact of this coming out in the future. But we already know that many of them are relying on contractors for some of these, particularly in the health services. And I've already seen data from states where they're uh, actually having to terminate those contractors because of the reduction in federal funding. So this has a widespread impact. The mega bill, the one big beautiful bill impact, we're not going to see that for another 6 months or more, but it's going to have a much more of a significant impact on the states than what we're seeing today.
Yeah, no, I think I 100% agree with what you're saying and what some of the state CIOs are seeing. Fortunately, I literally just came back from spending 5 days with my peers at the NACO annual conference as well. And what we're saying and what we all agreed is we don't want to hunker down. That's not the process that we all need to go through. That's the wrong direction we need to go to. What we need to do is be very communicative, talk about what's going on, collaborate in the up the chain to the electeds at the local level and communicating with the state level as well. But we need to be talking about what can we get done. Let's communicate very clearly with the budgets we have. What can we get done? What should be prioritized? And what are the things that are going to have to wait? It's not about, as you said, we're not going to hunker down, but we need to keep moving forward. There are certain things that I believe, and I think we all believe, that take priority, which is the citizen-centric or resident-centric perspective and providing services that are needed for them. If we think about the challenging times that we're going through, our residents and citizens are going through, and the businesses are going through those same challenging times as well. So we have to look at how do we meet them where they are, given the priorities that we have, and prioritizing our strategic planning around how do we make the largest impact for our residents and our communities. And so I think that's kind of when we talk about where do we go from an evolving shift perspective, we have to move. And I think we've kind of answered this as, and I'm saying that because we have another question about this and I'm going to move on from it. But our strategic planning needs to address where we are and what the funding levels that are coming and make sure that we're prioritizing based on what the largest impact is. And some of the smaller impact items are going to have to sit back and wait. We don't want to lose them, but we'll just put them in the backlog in order to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and one of the other questions that came up was how can organizations predict the impact of the emerging national trends on their locale and build resiliency into their organizations? That's a tough question.
Yeah, I tell my folks all the time, I'm not into predicting the future, because it's a difficult challenge. But again, I think there are also opportunities to look at here, and we're seeing that across numerous states. And so I see for the state and local government CIOs in particular that have long had this aspiration to do a higher degree of centralization, consolidation, optimization, all those great CIO words that end in TION. That's my favorite subject category on Jeopardy is words that end in TION because all those things require some type of pressure, and a lot of times that's internal. Now you have this external pressure, so I think it's a great opportunity. You can't predict what's going to happen from the federal side, but what you can know is that generally it's going to be a devolution or a movement of prior federal funds and services down on the state. Well, I tell the CIOs that's a great time to dust off that plan you had for consolidation and optimization of your services and bring it back up because that's what we're seeing. And we've seen it already come to fruition in a number of states, most recently in Arkansas with bill and executive order to require that. I think you're seeing that for, I think, 16 states now that have a Doge-like committee or a Doge-like operation. The CIOs there are seeing this as an opportunity to go back and bring up these topics that and the need to transform that they had not yet approved years ago, to say, we really need, if you're looking to try to streamline government and you're trying to reduce those costs, one way to do that is to come back and look at my data center consolidation plan that you didn't appreciate 4 or 5 years ago, but now you can see that. Or perhaps my optimization of some of these applications, professional licensing and occupational license. Right, we have 12 of these. We could do it with one. So I think the CIOs are bringing this, and you're seeing it come to life with states that are already having this. They're using that pressure. Again, they're using, it's not the budget pressure as much as it is this overall strive for economy. So rather than try to kind of predict that, you can kind of look at kind of the way the wind's blowing right now, and it's definitely towards that impact of streamlining government, and the CIOs can play a real role in that.
100% agree. And one of the other things that I would add to that is it's not just the consolidation, looking for the right places for consolidation, but one of the things that we've been focusing on is contracts. Our vendors, and not to disparage any vendor whatsoever in this, and I'll give my legal spiel there. But one of the things we're looking at is how can we come together, both at the state level, the local level, county level, whatever we want to say. We have very similar or the same vendors. So what we need to do is use our purchasing power. And I know the purchasing power is out there, but let's talk about licensing and get down to brass tacks. And as we bring things closer together in that consolidation, what the vendors have done very well is they've gone around and sold to different individual agencies, both at the state level and at the local level. And what we need to do is pull those back in and say, okay, no more of that. And what we found, even across my peers, is selling from one department to the next department, they give them different pricing. Even if there is a state term price that's available, they've given them different pricing. And so what we need to do is band together with our numbers and say, here's what we're willing to pay for something, and be able to see if we can drive the price down at the vendor level for some of the key applications that we all use. We all know that there are vendors out there, and I'm not going to name them, that are driving prices higher and higher, and we're beholden to them because it's what we all use. So what we need to do is start pushing back a little and say, no, I don't think so. Here's what we need to do. So I think it's the consolidation piece, but it's also taking advantage of our numbers as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we've been talking about this for years, as you know, Adam. And I think many states do have the availability on their master term contracts, right? And they make those available to local jurisdictions, local subdivisions, cities, counties, municipalities in their state, and many locals don't take advantage of that, but they could use that, as leverage. And we're going to certainly see more and more of that. When I look at our latest data about what are the offerings that states are providing to local governments in the technology space, number one is cybersecurity by far and away, and network and infrastructure services. But right up there is taking advantage of our contracts. So as states begin to do that, they should be asking, the local government should be asking the states, can we take advantage of that? Or if you're a state like Texas, which has a massive capability with their contracts, go look at what they're doing, because they sign participating agreements with state and local governments all across the country, and you can buy off that, or if not, if you don't use it directly, you can use it to negotiate.
Yeah, 100%. And
Divide and conquer is definitely the path.
Yeah, I agree. And I always look at whatever comes from state term schedule or state term pricing. I look at that as a ceiling. Doesn't mean I don't have a floor. I can go lower,
Right.
and I'll push for lower. So I think that's what we need to do, is say, okay, that's one price, but now let's all push harder together. Because if we look at our numbers, if you look across governments, states, localities across the country, we are the largest employer that these people are using. They're just
Exactly.
looking at us as separate employers versus one. And that's what we need to get them to think and say, you know what? No different than education, government pricing should be just about as low as education pricing. And we need to get them there. So, all right.
We've got a question in the chat here, and I know we've got others in there, but a question about we have been talking exclusively about Gen AI, but what about agentic AI? And I agree that we are going to see that. I think that's going to be the next wave of explosion certainly within the states, and our discussions around the possibilities are limitless around being able to have agents navigate what I call that state government pirate map for the citizens, right? So that is we will have data coming out on our latest survey on how AI can enhance citizen services, national survey of all the state CIOs, and then analysis and perspectives. But we did ask a series of questions on agentic AI. And what we found, we've got right now a couple of states that have AI, they have agents that are utilized, they're in production. It's relatively low end, but I do believe that agentic AI is going to have, because the possibility anyway, the potential to have dramatic impact, perhaps even more than generative AI, because of the capability of addressing the major complaint, as you talked about, the focus on citizen services. The major complaint from the citizens is, I can't find anything and I can't navigate. We asked, what's the major issue? So there's been a couple of national studies that have been done of thousands of citizens, and they asked them about federal, state, and local services, and that tends to be their number one complaint is, I can't find anything, I can't find what I want, and I can't have a seamless end-to-end transaction from beginning to payment and gone. I can't do that with a lot of my governments. There's some kind of hold up. There's some type of PDF form I have to download and email in. I can't pay for it, right? So I think that's their frustration. Agentic AI has, again, the potential, if designed correctly with some of these complex business processes, to unleash that power to the citizens and allow it to do that. So I'm excited about what we might see in helping out citizens in that space. But again, a couple of states are already doing some work in that area.
Yeah, 100% agree that that's the direction we're going to be going. It's not about taking jobs away; it's about making it better for the residents. The jobs on the state side and the locality side, they're not going anywhere. People fear from the workforce development perspective, well, if we keep going down this AI path, that jobs are going away. I don't see it that way. I really don't. I see it more on utilizing it to bring better service and faster service to the residents, but there's still stuff that has to be done at each level that is requiring a human aspect of it. One of the things we talk about is, how do we move beyond some of the laws that we have? And it's not just about the gen or agentic AI. It's around, how do we move into a situation where we can use those tools, where those, as you put it, those PDFs that have to be printed off and filled out, how do we move it in a way where we can actually have them fill it out online and then certify who they are, so that they can actually process it without having to print it and put it on in an envelope and send and mail it in, or try to I'll say fax it in, because I jokingly say this, the more people that print off something and have to fill it out and then send it in, the less services that are going out the door. We have to figure out a way to utilize the data available, allow people to opt in utilizing their data, so that we can use not just AI, but utilize a centricity perspective that looks at, how do we service our residents utilizing the technology we already have and we're using. We use it internally, so why can't we expose it to the external world and allow them to do that? And I'll even say this, one of the simplest things would be, and just kind of a sharing perspective, is, instead of going, each state has and every locality has a unclaimed funds perspective. Instead of having to print off the forms and mail them in and hope, we all have to start moving towards the perspective of using technology that they can certify who they are, sign the documents, and then get their funds sent to them. That's a simple one. And that's an easy one without having a lot of data sources behind it. But we have to be able to get to a point where we can
Exactly.
share data at every level, because there are people that receive services at the local level that are also receiving services at the state level, and that data has to be shared up and down and across. Go ahead, Doug.
Agree. Yeah, like I say, there's a continuing big brother fear there. We hear from citizens too
Yeah.
about that sharing. I thought about your example. One of the unintended consequences of the DOJ final rule may in fact be that more PDFs are going to be downloaded and printed off because they have to be remediated. And we all know that state and local governments have thousands of PDFs that support their transactions on websites. The documents that need to be downloaded, the policies, procedures, the forms, all of that. Many of those are in PDF. Well, under the current rule, they have to be remediated. They have to be accessible. They have to have contrast. There's a whole series of I think 50 plus checklist items on the compliance list for AA that you have to meet. PDF remediation is one of those. So I think that is a significant and heavy lift as we talk to the states about what are they going to do about that. So we may have more PDFs being printed off and mailed in now because they don't want to make them accessible to fill out. So I don't know. We'll have to see. So
Yeah, I was just having that conversation earlier today with some attorneys on our county side around accessibility and forms and everything else. And one of the comments that one of the attorneys made was they were talking to a group of attorneys, and one of the suggestions was, well, if you can't make it by the deadline, turn it off. Well, let's think about that. Can we turn off our websites? Could we turn off forms and things like that? That means we're effectively shutting things down. We
yeah,
can't do that. So we're not going to do that. But
no,
it's going to be hard to meet the guidelines that have been set out in front of us. And unfortunately, it's forcing us, as you stated, it's forcing us to look backwards and do things backwards from instead of taking advantage of the opportunities we have in front of us and utilizing technology. Um, so I want to touch on this. I know we're getting close to time here, so I wanted to touch on this, and I thought it was important from a federal and state and local government. What some of us are doing with the funding cuts to our federal partners like MSISAC and CISA, and what are local governments seeing in terms of impacts, and what are some of the suggestions of how we do and what we do to fill the gaps that have been created. Um, from me and myself, I went forward and talked to county administration, and we moved forward. We paid the fee to MSISAC and continued our relationship with them. I think that there are still some things that from a state all the way down to the locality perspective, we can work together on to make these things work. But I think that there are some things that we definitely all need, and some of that only comes from the federal government because they have the actionable intel that can help us. There just has to be a better way of getting it to us, given the fact that we don't have some of those entities available to us anymore.
correct. Right, and of course, we have both, sent letters, advocated, obviously with NASCIO individually as well as with the coalition of other associations to certainly urge that funding be made available to the MSISAC from DHS to continue to support their services. We have a long-term strategic partnership with MSISAC, so we have supported them. I know it's challenging. It's going to continue to be challenging because particularly on the state of the state, the whole what I call the whole state model that they're looking at for funding. There are a number of states that in their current budget situation, that's just not possible. So, that's the ideal model, is to have the state pay the full freight for all the state and local governments within their jurisdiction. But some states, again, the timing of this couldn't have been worse in terms of their budget is already been approved. Many states started their budget July 1 for their fiscal year. They're not in a situation where they can extract that many dollars. So some of them they're going to go after special appropriations. So that's some of the other challenges that we're going to have, is how they could do it. I see many of the smaller local governments being unable to continue to get MSISAC services once this is fully done. But we're obviously supporting that. We support it, but we can't do anything financially for that. But we can certainly urge that the states consider that. But I know some of them just the timing of this is very bad. This is I think the the impact of this and the impact of believing that you can transfer all of this to the states, that certainly might have been the case when you give the states particularly a long runway, because they need to get these in the budget, and none of them had the opportunity to do that. So we're going to have to see, but it's extremely frustrating, I know, for many of the state CIOs and the state CISOs out there that they're dealing with this when they know they're not going to be able to get that tranche of dollars from their state. So we'll have to see. I know it looks like we're out of time here, Adam. So,
I know it's always like that when you and I get started.
yeah.
And unfortunately, we can't get through all the questions. But I do appreciate having time to spend with you and with all of our folks that are listening to the webinar. And feel free to send other questions. We'll try to see what we can do. And all of this will be available, and any slides will also be available. Thanks for joining us. I think we all agree that the next 6 months to a year is going to be some challenging times, but some rewarding times as we move forward. We just have to remember that we've got to be adaptable. We've got to work collaboratively all together, and we have to show our resilience in how we meet our needs and meet the needs of our citizens. So I appreciate your time, and always good to see you.
Same here, Adam. Good to see you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.